Welcome to Everyday Cooking with Ann. Today we're going to make a German chocolate pecan pie bar. So wonderful because this is like a crust you would make for lemon bars or any kind of a shortbread crust. That is going to be the bottom layer, and then we're going to be making a pecan mixture with all kinds of other things to make it delicious for the top. And then we take it out of the oven and then we cut them into bars and serve them. And it has coconut, pecans, brown sugar, a little bit of caramel. We'll show you as we go along all the different ingredients that we'll be putting into this dish, this wonderful pecan bar. So what I've done already is I've already had my oven on at 350 because I have already toasted my pecans on a nice little plate here for about 10 minutes. And what I did was I put them in for 5 minutes first, and then I stirred them around, and then I put them in for another 5 minutes, just when they start getting really fragrant, so they're nice and toasted. I also have prepped my pan. You want to have a pan that is 9 by 13, and you can use aluminum foil, which the recipe calls for, but I have these perfectly sized parchment sheets that I order by the 100. You can order them online if you do a lot of baking like I do, because I use it on the bottom of almost everything, any kind of cookies or bars or anything like that. I use that into the bottom as well as all of my other bacon on my big 15 by 10 pans, baking pans. So all I've done is spray this with a little spray on the bottom to make it stick, so it'll stick in the corners. And it's all set to go for me to put my crust in. And let's get started, and I'm going to show you how to make the crust. What we do to make the crust, we are going to put 1 3/4 cup of butter. With the other 1/4 cup, I will already put in the microwave to make another part of the dish. So you need 2 whole cubes of butter for this recipe, but only for 1 3/4 for the crust. I've already cut it into little cubes, so it's easy to incorporate. Putting that in my pan. I also have 1 3/4 cup of flour. And I also will need 3/4 of a cup of powdered sugar that's going to go in this crust. And I also have a 1/4 cup of cocoa. Now my cocoa is not Hershey's cocoa. If you have seen any of my other recipes, I use a really special cocoa that I order or buy at Orson Gigi, or you can order this online, but it's a special cocoa called Calibut Royal Dutch Processed Cocoa. I use this for making anything I use cocoa with because it's very high quality. And of course, the more high quality your ingredients, the better your bars will turn out. So this is something you might want to consider doing. Okay, that's the kind of cocoa. We're going to add all of this right here, and then I'm going to turn on my Breville and start mixing this together with the butter. You want cold butter, by the way. You don't want softened butter. You want it cold because we're going to make this until it turns into little peas before we put it into our pan. You can use a fruit processor to do this, but I have used my Breville for many years to make this certain type of crust. It breaks up the butter nicely, and so just so I don't have to do the mess with a food processor, I'm using my Breville to do it. As you can see, it's flour and butter together. I'm going to wait till this goes to about pea size on the butter before I put it into my pan. You can see this is kind of in the texture of coarse meal. There's little bits of butter all around. I'm going to dump this whole thing into the pan. A little bit more here, caught at the bottom here. And what I do is I just spread it over the bottom like this, but you want to press it in because it's going to bake, and you want the butter to bake with the flours and the sugars into a nice bottom layer. So this is a major portion of, you can see how much this is into a 9 by 13. And it's a little bit floury, but so at this point I'm going to start pressing in like this. And I use a regular cup to do that. You can see when I press down, it smashes down. And you can go up to the sides too a little bit on the sides. Okay, I'm going to put this in the oven for 15 minutes to bake. Now the recipe calls for 1 1/2 cups of chocolate chips, or you can vary it, which I have done. So I have 1 1/2 cups of chocolate chips, but I also have, I have a 3/4 cup of chocolate chips, but I also have 3/4 cups of butterscotch chips, which I think will make it extra special as well, since I have those on hand. So I'm going to go ahead and put these in the bottom here. I'm actually going to put this back in the oven for about 5 more minutes. Let them melt, and then it has to cool for about. I have 3 very large eggs in my little bowl, and I need to beat these up. This is going to be the pecan part of our cookies, our pecan bars. So I'm going to mix. This is also what's going to kind of the glue that will hold this all together are these eggs and the caramel syrup. So let me tell you, we've got 3 eggs, which I have slightly beaten. I'm going to go ahead and add in 3/4 cup of brown sugar. You got to have brown sugar in pecan bars for sure. Then I have 3/4 cup of caramel syrup. This is all part of everything you would put in a pecan pie. And we're adding a 1/4 cube of butter, which is a 1/2 of a cube. Actually, a 1/4 cup of butter, which is a 1/2 a cube of butter. And what makes this German chocolate is we're adding a cup of coconut. And we're now adding all of the pecans as well. And I've got whole pecans, not the chopped up kind, so it'll look like a pecan pie as well. We're going to pour this over our crust and chocolate chips and butterscotch chips and get it ready to put in the oven. Just spread that around. This is really quite decadent, honestly. It's going to be so good, but it'd be a great treat to take to an office party or any party where you're asked to bring sweets of any kind, because it'll feed a lot of people and everybody's always impressed with pecan pie, pecan bars, etc. So we're going to put this in the oven for about 35 to 40 more minutes, and we'll check back with you then. Bars have been baking for, I put them in for 30 minutes. You can put them in for 25 to 30 minutes. And this needs to cool on a rack like this for about an hour. And then you need to also cool them completely in the refrigerator before you cut them. So what I do, whether you're using aluminum foil or like parchment, but you can just take all of this out when they're completely cooled and lay them on the counter, and you can cut them into the size bar you want. I love this little tool. You can cut nuts with this, but I use this as one of my dough cutters and scrapers, and I use it for cutting bars and things because it makes a really nice cut. You can buy this at most kitchen stores. I love this tool for so many different reasons, but anyway, that's how I cut my bars, and so we'll show you what they look like when we're ready to serve. And but this is what you're going to see when you pull it out of the oven.